It started with a sharp pain that wouldn't let up. Maya pressed her hand to her side, her breath shallow, her steps unsteady as she staggered into the emergency room of St. Julian General just past midnight. The place was packed. The air smelled like antiseptic and despair. People slumped in plastic chairs, nurses moved like ghosts behind the reception glass, and a flat voice called names from a speaker that crackled every few seconds. Maya reached the front desk, clutching her ribs. "Please," she said through clenched teeth. "I think it's internal bleeding. I need help." The receptionist barely glanced up. "Take a seat. Someone will call you." "I'm not sure I can wait," Maya whispered. Now the woman looked up, slowly. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "We're at capacity. Unless you're coding, you wait like everyone else." Maya's vision blurred, but she nodded and sank into a chair, pressing her back against the cold wall. 15 minutes passed. Then 30. Her shirt was damp with sweat, her breathing fast and shallow. She leaned toward a passing nurse. "Please, I think I'm going to pass out." The nurse stopped, looked her up and down, then shook her head. "If you're still talking, you're still stable. Sit tight." That was when Maya's legs gave out. She collapsed right there on the floor. Nobody rushed. No one even shouted. A security guard walked over, muttered into his radio, and said, "Miss, you can't lie here. People need to walk through this area." That's when the sliding ER doors whooshed open again, and someone else walked in. Michelle Yeoh. And everything changed. The room didn't recognize her right away. Not at first. Michelle Yeoh wasn't in a gown or on a red carpet. She was in a dark hoodie, jeans, no makeup, her hair pulled into a quick bun. But her stride had that same quiet authority, the kind that fills a room before her voice even does. She froze the moment she saw Maya on the ground, barely conscious, one hand clutching her side. Michelle stepped forward immediately. "What happened to her?" she asked sharply, glancing at the nearest nurse. The nurse didn't respond. The receptionist looked up, annoyed, and muttered, "She said she was in pain but wouldn't wait her turn." Michelle dropped to one knee beside Maya. "Can you hear me?" she asked, placing 2 fingers against Maya's pulse point. Her tone was calm, but her eyes flicked with urgency. Maya tried to nod. "Hurts, bad," Michelle stood up. "She's pale, sweating, and her pulse is thready. She's clearly in distress. You need to get her help, now." The security guard stepped forward, arms crossed. "Ma'am, you can't interfere with hospital procedures. If she's not a priority, she's not a priority." Michelle slowly turned to him. "And what's your medical qualification to make that call?" Her voice was soft, but it cut like a blade. The guard hesitated. That's when a doctor in scrubs rounded the corner, distracted, reading a clipboard. Michelle's voice rang out, firm, "Doctor. This woman collapsed in your waiting room, and no one has helped her." The doctor looked up, blinked, and froze. "Ms. Yeoh." Michelle ignored the recognition. "She needs attention immediately. If you don't act, I'll make sure the entire hospital hears about this tonight." The doctor rushed over. "Get her on a gurney. Right now." 2 nurses appeared almost instantly, wheeling over equipment, lifting Maya gently but quickly. The change was instant, surgical. Like someone had flipped a switch. Michelle followed closely as they rolled Maya down the corridor. Maya, barely conscious, managed a whisper, "Who was that?" One of the nurses smiled faintly. "You don't know. That's Michelle Yeoh. You're in good hands now." The ER hallway was suddenly alive with urgency. Beeping monitors echoed through the walls as Maya was wheeled into a private exam bay. A nurse clipped sensors to her chest and fingertips, while another started in 4. Michelle stood just outside the curtain, arms crossed tightly, her expression unreadable. But anyone who looked could tell, she was not leaving. Inside, the doctor examined Maya quickly. Abdominal rigidity, low blood pressure, she wasn't exaggerating. He looked at the nurse. Get imaging. We need a CT scan now. The curtain swished closed. Michelle stepped aside, her phone already in her hand. She wasn't making a call to a friend, she was calling someone in hospital administration. Her voice was low, crisp, and composed. I just watched your ER staff ignore a young woman in medical crisis. They didn't assess her. They didn't triage her. They tried to move her off the floor instead. You need to check your security footage before this becomes public. A pause. Then she added, and yes, this is Michelle Yeoh. By the time Michelle hung up, the doctor had emerged from behind the curtain. She's stable for now, he said, looking almost apologetic. It appears to be a ruptured ovarian cyst. Dangerous, but treatable. We're prepping her for surgery now. Michelle nodded. Will she be okay? She'll be sore, but yes, thanks to you. Just then, the receptionist from earlier approached, eyes down, voice small. Ms. Yeoh, I didn't realize. I didn't mean, Michelle turned toward her slowly. You didn't need to realize who I am. You needed to realize she was in pain. The receptionist's mouth opened but no words came. Michelle looked past her. People remember when they're ignored. And they remember who stood beside them when it counted. The nurse reappeared. She's asking for you. Michelle stepped into the room. Maya lay there, pale but smiling faintly. You didn't have to stay, Michelle sat beside her and gently took her hand. Sometimes people forget how to listen. I don't. The surgery was a success. A few hours later, Maya was resting in a recovery room, the dim light from the bedside monitor casting a soft glow over her face. Her breathing had steadied. The pain meds dulled the ache in her abdomen, but her mind was sharp enough to replay everything. Michelle was still there. She sat by the window in a visitor's chair, sipping water from a paper cup, calm and watchful. Not as an actress. Not as a celebrity. Just as someone who refused to leave. When Maya stirred, Michelle moved closer. Hey, she said gently. You made it through. Doctor said you're going to be fine. Maya blinked, voice raspy. Why did you stay? Michelle smiled. Because you deserve to be seen. And I've seen too many people get overlooked for the wrong reasons. Maya swallowed hard. They didn't even look at me. Like I didn't matter. Michelle nodded slowly. You matter. You always did. They just chose not to notice until someone louder forced them to. There was a pause. Then Maya whispered, what happens now? Michelle glanced toward the hallway. That depends on you. But know this, your story won't go unheard. She reached into her bag and pulled out a business card. If you ever want help filing a formal complaint, or if you just need someone to stand with you again, I will. Maya took the card with trembling fingers. Her eyes welled up, not from pain, but from something else. A feeling she hadn't known she needed so badly, validation. Michelle stood up. I'll let the nurses take over from here. But I'll check in on you tomorrow. Before she left the room, she turned back one last time. Next time someone says you don't matter, remind them who walked in for you. And with that, she was gone. Quiet, like a whisper. But Maya would never forget the moment the world changed, because someone noticed. By morning, word had spread. Hospital leadership arrived early, faces tense, ties straightened. An internal review had already been launched. Security footage had been pulled. Staff were being questioned. But none of that mattered to Maya as much as what had happened overnight. She had slept. Safely. Without fear. Without being dismissed. Her nurse came in with a warm smile and fresh linens. "You've got a visitor," she said softly. Michelle stepped in again, this time with fresh coffee and 2 breakfast muffins. "I figured you could use something real to eat," she said. Maya chuckled, weakly but gratefully. "You didn't have to." "I did," Michelle replied. "Because this story isn't just about what happened to you. It's about how we respond to what's broken." Maya looked down at her hands. "I don't want to be a symbol." "You're not," Michelle said. "You're a human being who deserved care. That's enough." As they talked, Maya's phone buzzed. Her inbox was filling up, messages from friends, reporters, strangers. Somehow, the story had gotten out. But Michelle hadn't posted anything. She didn't have to. Someone in the ER had filmed the confrontation. It was already trending online. Michelle Yeoh steps in after patient ignored in ER. Maya looked nervous. "What if people start calling me for interviews?" Michelle placed a hand on hers. "You can tell your truth if you want. Or stay private. That choice is yours now, because you hold the narrative." There was silence for a few moments. Then Maya smiled. "I think I'll speak. But not to be dramatic. Just so maybe the next girl who walks in doesn't have to collapse before someone believes her." Michelle nodded, eyes proud. As she left the hospital that day, Michelle passed the front desk. The receptionist didn't make eye contact. Neither did the security guard. But the nurse who had helped Maya looked up and whispered, "Thank you." Michelle gave a quiet nod and walked out into the morning light. And inside, Maya finally felt what she hadn't since the moment she entered that ER, seen. Heard. And never invisible again. 2 days later, Maya sat upright in her hospital bed, dressed in her own clothes again. Her discharge papers were ready, and her pain had dulled into something manageable. But outside her room, the world had shifted. The video, grainy but unmistakable, had reached millions. Clips showed Michelle Yeoh kneeling beside Maya, confronting hospital staff, and standing with quiet defiance as medical workers scrambled into action. The comments were flooded with shock, support, and demands for accountability. And now, reporters were gathering outside St. Julian General. Maya scrolled through her phone until she found it, Michelle's official statement, posted that morning. "I didn't go to that hospital to make a statement. I went because someone was in pain, and no one listened. Healthcare must never be selective. Compassion should not depend on how loud you are, how you look, or who knows your name." Maya didn't need a celebrity, she needed a nurse. She needed fairness. "I stood up because she deserved that. Let this moment remind us, dignity is not optional. It is the minimum." Michelle Yeoh. Maya read it 3 times. A nurse knocked gently and entered. "There's someone from the board of directors here. She'd like to speak with you privately, if you're okay with that." Maya hesitated, then nodded. "Let her in." A tall woman in a navy pantsuit entered, holding a folder. Her voice was careful. "Ms. Gardner. I'm from hospital administration. First, I want to say, on behalf of everyone, we failed you. And we are sorry." Maya raised her eyes slowly. "You're not here to silence me, are you?" The woman shook her head. "No. We're here to listen. And to start making this right. You deserve that." Maya exhaled and looked out the window. Reporters were still waiting. Her phone buzzed again, another call from a major outlet. She turned back to the administrator. "Then you can start by making sure no one else gets ignored the way I did. No excuses. No more." 3 days later, Maya Gardner stepped onto the small stage at a live-streamed town hall event organized by a local health advocacy group. The media had tried to pull her into chaos, but she had chosen this, her words, her pace, her terms. She wore a soft blue blazer and no makeup, her natural curls pulled back. She didn't need polish. She only needed truth. At her side sat the moderator, a journalist known for grace and depth, not drama. Maya, she began gently, the footage struck a nerve with millions. But before all that, how were you feeling that night, before Michelle Yeoh walked in? Maya took a breath. Invisible, she said. Like I didn't belong in my own body. Like pain wasn't enough to count unless someone else decided it was real. There was a hush in the room. I walked into that ER terrified something was rupturing inside me. I asked for help. I begged. I collapsed. And they still looked through me. The moderator nodded. Then Michelle Yeoh arrived. Did you know who she was? No, Maya said, a soft smile breaking through. Not at first. But I knew what she was. She was present. She saw me. She didn't hesitate. She didn't need a file or permission to care. The moderator leaned forward. What do you want people to remember from this? Maya looked directly at the cameras. That compassion shouldn't need credentials. That no one should have to be famous to be treated like they matter. And that being overlooked isn't just humiliating, it can be deadly. Applause stirred in the room, slow and rising. Maya paused, her voice steady. I'm not here because of what Michelle Yeoh did. I'm here because she reminded me that silence doesn't protect you. But speaking might protect the next person. Outside the building, Michelle Yeoh watched from the crowd, wearing sunglasses and standing back in silence. She smiled, not out of pride, but out of respect. Because Maya had found her voice. And now, the world was listening. 2 weeks later, St. Julian General issued an unprecedented public statement. Their CEO stood before cameras, flanked by board members and community advocates. We failed a patient, he said plainly. There are no excuses. We are now launching a full equity and sensitivity retraining initiative across every department, effective immediately. We've updated our triage protocols and installed a direct patient advocate line available 24/7 in the ER. At the end of his speech, he added one more thing. And we'd like to thank Ms. Maya Gardner, not just for her courage, but for sparking the change we should have made long ago. Maya watched the stream from home, curled up on her couch, phone in hand. Her inbox was still full, messages from young nurses, other patients, even medical students who said they would do better because of her story. Then a text came in. It was from an unknown number. Michelle Yeoh, still proud of you. The hard part isn't speaking up, it's staying loud enough to be heard. You did both. Lunch soon. My treat. Maya smiled and texted back, only if you don't make me cry in public again. Later that week, they met at a quiet cafe by the water, no cameras, no makeup, just two women who knew what it meant to be underestimated and still stand tall. As they laughed over noodles and jasmine tea, Maya looked out at the city skyline and said, "You didn't just help me. You changed the way they look at people like me." Michelle shook her head gently. "No. You changed it. I just made sure they had to watch." The two clinked glasses of tea. And in that moment, Maya knew, this wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning. Weeks passed. Then months. Maya's story didn't fade, it grew. What began as a confrontation in a crowded ER became a case study in medical schools. Her speech at the town hall was clipped into documentaries, quoted in essays, and played at nursing conferences under a new title, See the Pain Before the Fame. She was invited to speak at a healthcare equity summit in Washington, D.C. At first, Maya hesitated. She wasn't a professional speaker, just a woman who had nearly been ignored to death. But Michelle called her the night before the event. You don't have to be perfect. Just be real. That's more than enough. At the summit, Maya stood before a hall of doctors, CEOs, and policymakers. Her words were calm, but undeniable. You don't need a red carpet moment to treat someone like they matter. I was in pain, and people walked by. What saved me wasn't fame, it was attention. It was action. If you're in healthcare and you need someone famous to walk in before you care, then you're not in healthcare. You're in performance. The crowd was silent. Then, one by one, they stood. Applause swept the room like a wave of acknowledgement. Afterward, Michelle met her backstage. She had a small pin in her hand, engraved with a simple phrase, "Never invisible again." Maya held it like it was made of gold. As they stepped outside into the sun, reporters began to gather, but Maya walked ahead of them. Because now, she wasn't just a voice that had been ignored. She was a voice others listened for. And somewhere deep in the crowd, someone else who once felt invisible stood a little taller. Months after that fateful night, the ripple effects were still unfolding. A new law was introduced in Maya's state, the Immediate Dignity Act, requiring all hospitals to have a licensed patient advocate physically present in ER waiting areas at all times. It passed with overwhelming support. During the bill's signing ceremony, the governor invited Maya to stand beside him. Cameras flashed, but Maya kept her eyes on the crowd, not for fame, but for faces like hers that now had a new kind of protection. The hospital where it all began had changed too. They renamed one of their community outreach centers the Gardner Patient Resource Wing. Michelle Yeoh quietly funded a portion of it, with one condition: no press release. Just results. Later, at a small, private dedication ceremony, Michelle stood beside Maya under a simple plaque. No red carpet. No flashing bulbs. Just a circle of nurses, advocates, and patients, those who understood what it meant to be unheard, and what it took to be seen. As they stepped outside, Maya looked up at the sky and exhaled deeply. "You know," she said softly, "that night I thought everything was ending." Michelle smiled, hands in her coat pockets. It wasn't. It was just the moment they had to start paying attention. They walked side by side through the hospital parking lot. People glanced. A few waved. Some whispered. But no one ignored them. Because the world had changed. And it all started when one woman collapsed in pain, and another walked in and refused to look away.